Picture this, you're 17 years old. You just graduated high school. Your whole life should be stretching out before you, filled with possibilities and dreams. But instead of choosing your future has already chosen you. And it's not college, it's not a career, it's not freedom. It's 7 years of hell. This is the reality for every healthy young man in North Korea. And today, we're diving into the brutal world of the Korean People's Army through the eyes of one teenager who had no choice but to become a soldier. Welcome back to Twilight Telling, where we uncover the stories that most people never hear. And today's story is about Park Jung, a 17-year-old North Korean boy whose graduation from high school wasn't a celebration of achievement. It was a death sentence to his youth. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. This is the daily reality for over 1 million active soldiers in one of the world's most secretive and militarized nations. So buckle up, because this journey into North Korea's military machine is darker than you can imagine. Chapter 1: No Escape. In North Korea, if you're a healthy male who just finished high school, your destiny isn't yours to decide. The state has already written your story. According to North Korean law, if you meet 3 simple criteria, you're drafted. No questions asked, no appeals granted. First, you need to be physically healthy. Park Jung's health was secretly evaluated twice by the local military mobilization committee. Once when he was 15 and again at 16. He didn't even know these assessments were happening. They came to his school under the guise of routine checkups. Second, your family record must be clean. No history of rebellion, no political dissent, no suspicious activities. Park Jung's family scored well on this front. They were ordinary working-class people who kept their heads down and followed the rules. Third, you need that high school diploma. And with those 3 boxes checked, Park Jung's fate was sealed. Now, you might be thinking, wasn't military service once considered an honor? You'd be right. Before the Great Famine of the 1990s, joining the army was actually prestigious. It meant a stable food supply, better career prospects, and elevated social status. But times have changed dramatically. Today's North Korean youth will do almost anything to avoid conscription. Not because they're cowards, but because the economics have shifted. Working in black markets or becoming small-time merchants can earn you far more than being a soldier ever will. It's become an open secret that families with money will bribe local military mobilization committee officials, usually with about $100, roughly several months' wages, just to have their sons declared medically unfit for service. Some desperate families even go further, having their children fake serious illnesses. But the risk is astronomical. If you're caught dodging mandatory military service, you're looking at a year in a forced labor camp where you'll work until your body breaks. Park Jung's family didn't have money for bribes, and Park Jung himself was perfectly healthy. So just like every other boy in his graduating class, his fate was stamped and approved. He registered for the Korean People's Army, ready to begin a service term that would consume 7 to 8 years of his life. Even his female classmates weren't spared. They faced mandatory 5-year terms, their youth also sacrificed to the state. Chapter 2: The Military Machine. Park Jung was about to become a tiny cog in a massive military machine. The Korean People's Army is divided into several branches: the ground force, the Navy, the Air Force, the strategic force that handles nuclear missiles, and the elite Special Operations Force. With approximately 1.3 million active personnel, plus millions more in reserves and civilian militia, North Korea operates the world's 4th largest military. This makes it one of the most militarized nations on the planet, which makes sense given their national policy of defense above everything else. Park Jung's first stop was training camp, a 3-month brainwashing factory designed to transform civilian teenagers into obedient soldiers. The conditions were brutal, the discipline was merciless, and the training was intensely physical. He learned to shoot, to march dozens of kilometers with a heavy pack crushing his shoulders, and various combat techniques. But woven through all the physical suffering was something even more relentless: indoctrination. Every single day, his mind was force-fed propaganda about blind devotion to the nation and the supreme leader, the concept of self-sacrifice for North Korea's advancement was drilled so deeply that thinking about your own welfare felt like committing a sin. Yet ironically, there was one aspect of training camp that made Park Jung's life slightly better than his civilian existence: food. North Korea has suffered chronic food shortages for decades. For poor civilians, hunger and skipping meals is simply part of life. But at training camp, at least in theory, soldiers were promised 3 meals a day. For Park Jung and many others from modest families, joining the military might be the most reliable way to fill their stomachs. Chapter 3: Armed with Relics. After 3 months of grueling training, Park Jung was officially sworn in. He received his military identification card, took his oath of loyalty, and was assigned to the ground force, the largest branch of North Korea's military. He was issued his new best friend, a Type 88 assault rifle. This weapon is essentially North Korea's version of the Soviet AK-74, with several variants. Some have wooden stocks, others have folding stocks. He'd also frequently see other ancient weapons still in active use, like the Type 58, which is a knockoff of the AK-47, or even SKS rifles and PPSH-41 submachine guns left over from World War II. The uniform he received had a forest camouflage pattern. Ironically, it looked so similar to South Korea's old uniforms that the South had to redesign theirs with a digital pattern just to avoid confusion during actual combat. Don't imagine a high-tech military force. While North Korea does spend roughly a quarter of its national economy on the military, an insane proportion, their economy is so small and so heavily sanctioned that their actual military budget is only about $7 to $11 billion annually. Compare that to South Korea's $48 billion, or America's $1 trillion. The result? Most of North Korea's military equipment is junk. Their weapons are outdated, poorly maintained, and mostly leftovers from the Soviet Union or cheap copies from China. There are even reports that some units still operate T-34 tanks from World War II. Chapter 4: Life on the Front Line. Like most North Korean soldiers, Park Jung wasn't stationed somewhere comfortable. He was sent straight to the tiger's cage, the southern front line, dangerously close to the DMZ, the demilitarized zone that separates North and South Korea. This is the most heavily guarded and tense border in the entire world. Park Jung's mission and his unit's mission was simple and terrifying. Be ready to die defending against an attack from the South and their American allies, or be ready to die when ordered to invade the South to reunify the Korean peninsula. Park Jung's daily routine was like prison with military discipline layered on top. Wake up at 5:40 in the morning for running and push-ups. Quick bath with soap in the nearest river, regardless of how freezing the weather was. Breakfast at 6:40. Usually just a small portion of corn, vegetables, and cereal or rice. Morning roll call followed, then training, and more training. Shooting drills, tactical exercises, weapons cleaning, lunch, then more training. Finally, rest at 5:40 in the evening. After dinner, there was a tiny window of freedom where soldiers could play sports, play cards, or smoke cigarettes. Laundry was only done once a week. Evening roll call at 9, lights out by 9:30. Sleep, then repeat everything tomorrow. The suffering didn't stop at the barracks. During certain months like May, June, October, and November, these soldiers were repurposed as laborers. They were sent to work on agricultural farms or construction projects to keep the country functioning. Even that promise of 3 meals a day from training camp often remained just that, a promise. Chapter 5: The Invisible Wars. Although North Korea hasn't fought a major war since the 1950s, that doesn't mean Park Jung would be safe forever. Quietly, North Korea frequently deploys troops abroad to support their interests. They've been involved in the Vietnam War, the Yom Kippur War, and various African conflicts. Recently, reports have emerged that thousands of North Korean soldiers were sent to Russia to assist in the war in Ukraine. Park Jung definitely dreamed often about escaping, fleeing to China, or even to the South, to the better life he'd heard about from illegal radio broadcasts. But he knew these were dangerous fantasies. Discipline in the North Korean military is absolutely ruthless. One small mistake in what you say can have fatal consequences. Recently, 2 soldiers were severely punished simply for referring to South Korea by an alternative name that implied recognition of the South Korean government's sovereignty. Try to escape and get caught. 5 years in a forced labor camp awaits you, where you'll be tortured, beaten, starved, and denied medical treatment. Chapter 6: The 3-Generation Rule. But the cruelest thing, the thing that guaranteed Park Jung would never dare escape, is the 3-generation punishment rule. This is the most insane and most effective tool for controlling the population. If Park Jung committed a serious crime, like desertion, he wouldn't be the only one punished. His father, his mother, his siblings, even his grandparents, everyone would suffer the consequences. They could lose their jobs, have their social status destroyed, or even be sent to forced labor camps themselves. Park Jung would never let that happen to his family. So with no other options, Park Jung could only surrender to his fate. He accepted his destiny, enduring each day with hard labor, inadequate food, and brutal treatment. He was just one of millions of nameless pawns whose youth was sacrificed to the state. And this is the reality behind the closed borders of North Korea. While the rest of the world debates politics and policies, real people like Park Jung are living through unimaginable hardship, trapped by a system they didn't choose and can't escape. The next time you hear about North Korea in the news, remember Park Jung. Remember the millions like him whose stories will never be told, whose dreams were buried before they even began. What do you think about this system? Could you survive in Park Jung's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. If this story opened your eyes to a reality you didn't know existed, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories that shine a light on the world's darkest corners, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. This is Twilight Telling, where we tell the stories that matter. I'll see you in the next one.